And I remember after that, I saw the video that he had posted. He is like saying, "We love you. This is like they stole this from us. Like we understand your pain or whatever." Like he was going off praising them, and then he said at the end, "But we have to go home in peace." To be honest, that first part for me killed whatever he had to say at the end of the video. It didn't matter what even he had to say at the end or go home in peace. It didn't matter because of what he said in the beginning, because it was why were they there for? Because you said that the election was being stolen. How do you start the video? By saying the election was stolen. Doesn't even matter what you say after that. So it was to the point where I was seeing that, I'm like, bro, this guy is just inciting the mob. Literally, he's just inciting them. And then I remember, I think first they suspended Trump for a day or something, 24 hours. And after that, it was like for indefinitely or whatever. But it's interesting. I don't really, because a lot of people have made an argument about, okay, well, this sets a bad precedent because now you have these tech companies choosing who can speak, who not to speak. They quote unquote, they regulate free speech. So it's not really free speech. And then imagine one talking point I hear all the time. Like I heard it from Chris Christie today. I was rolling my eyes. It was like, he's like, what he was talking to George Papadopoulos, I think that's his name, or Stephanopoulos. He's like, what do you think when they're going to start censoring somebody that you like or whatever? And it's one of those where it's like, honestly, like, I feel like some people are incredibly fear mongering, but also at the same time, it's just like Twitter has their rules. They have policies. When you sign into Twitter, I know a lot of people ain't reading it. We just click the check mark and we go and then you tweet away or whatever. But if they basically say something and then you break that policy, and the Trump policy the policy that Trump broke was, I think, glorification of violence, of the violence policy. That's what he broke. But as soon as you break that policy, you're at Twitter's mercy. So I think it comes to the point where I think from the standpoint of Twitter, they're trying to cover their backs because they're like, we don't want to be the vehicle to insurrection. No company, private business wants to be the vehicle to that. At the same time, though, if you're doing that to Trump, you also need to keep it consistent. Because what happens a lot, and we can talk a bit more later about this, but just sticking on the Trump point, what happens a lot is that they kind of apply these policies arbitrarily. They don't stay consistent with it. And that's where people get mad. So when the people start getting mad and start fear mongering, I see where they're coming from, because these tech companies usually, they don't stay consistent. So from Twitter's standpoint, I believe if you're going to do this, stay consistent. Everybody who does something that violates that, they also get banned indefinitely. You can't have the appearance that you're swaying one way or another, because I think Twitter, the big thing is like we allow free speech or whatever. So in that sense, obviously, when somebody breaks your rules and conditions, then take them off the platform.
Yeah. No, it's right. First of all, a lot of people are fear mongering, saying, as you said, Chris Christie saying, what happens when they do this to someone you like? Well, if someone I like incites a mob that, goes and, breaks into the Capitol, then that person should get thrown off Twitter. So
literally,
like there's, it's not that complicated, but at the same time, Twitter, has been in hot waters because obviously the moderate people, they have their rules and regulations regarding to what people say, like normal people say, and they have other rules for world leaders. So they say, like, they believe world leaders should have a platform to, to communicate, and people should, like when it's of general interest, like, despite how bad it is, they usually keep those tweets up. And that's why they really indulge Trump for the past 4 years. And also there's, like, this is just a side point, but, there's also the fact that, like, Trump was the president for the past 4 years,
yeah.
And he lost it, like, when the banned him, he had lost an election. There was an incoming administration. So, like, from Twitter's standpoint, if they indulge Trump when he's inciting violence and the Biden administration gets there with a Democratic Senate, Democratic Congress, they're going to feel the heat, So from their standpoint, like, it's rational to act, but they've been indulging Trump for a long time, Like, he was literally threatening nuclear war on Twitter. He said something about like bombing North Korea. I can't recall the exact tweets. And people are like, how the hell do you allow this on the platform? He said something about bombing cultural sites in Iran, which would be a war crime. Like, he was threatening war crimes on the platform. And those tweets stayed up. They didn't even have, like, at the time, they didn't even put the label or put the little thing that they've been putting since the election, Like, that's why I understand when people when people are enraged and say that, like, they don't have a clear standard in terms of their enforcement. And, but oftentimes we hear these complaints from people on the right, like, I suppose you can like, there are reasonable cases where people where Twitter wasn't arbitrating the right as it does on the left, but if you look at the social media ecosystem when it comes to politics, like, the right media thrives, on social media, especially Facebook. Like, for the past, if you like, for anybody listening to this, just go back and look at the top stories shared on Facebook. Like, I don't know how long you want to go back. Say the past year, you'll see like 9 out of 10 are like Ben Shapiro or Fox News or whatever. It's always like right wing medias, and the right complains a lot about that, but they're doing extremely well, and there's a lot of it is reactionary, and there's a lot of misinformation on Facebook, like people were actually planning the insurrection on Facebook. You had Facebook groups where people were planning, and like, there's literally proof of people saying, oh, we'll pick you up. Don't take a flight because they'll track you or whatever. Where do you live? We'll pick you up on the way to Washington. Like, there are those posts and those posts in Facebook groups, Like, obviously, Facebook took down a few groups, but they literally didn't do enough, Like, an insurrection was planned on their platform, So, like, a lot of these social media are trying to save face, but like, people really need, like, the incoming administration and the Congress and Senate need to look into this. Like, it cannot continue like this. Like, it's not healthy for democracy. It's not healthy for the society. What's happening on Facebook, to some extent, what's happening on Twitter.
Yeah, because I think I've never seen this in my life. So many people snitch on themselves. I've never seen this. Like, these guys were going in the Capitol taking pictures. One guy there, yo, can you take my picture here? I'm sitting in Nancy Pelosi's desk. Yo, take my. These people were all snitching on themselves, and obviously through the use of Twitter, the FBI has been taking them down one by one. They've been catching these guys. It's probably the easiest operation they've ever had to do, because all these guys snitch on themselves. But again, like, what the side point that I wanted to talk to about that I'm going to talk about now was, like, a lot, like, as you and me, like, we're creatives, we're on platforms and we talk about tightly contested issues. And I know even for us, especially when we release some of these videos, like, this gets categorized as, okay, this is politics. Doesn't matter whether it's local Canadian politics, local Toronto politics, or U.S. politics. This is categorized, okay, this is federal politics. Boom, this is in one box. Okay, this is sensitive issue. I was talking about Nigeria, sensitive foreign issue. Boom, categorized. And I think that's where, even for me, this stuff starts getting annoying because you also can't use those videos. Like you can't try to run ads on them or etc. And that's where it becomes annoying because as much as people are like, well, Jack Dorsey is going to choose who gets to speak or whatever, as much as that could be true as well, what is also true is that a lot of times it's the AI that's doing all this. So the AI is already predisposed to like look for certain things. And if they see something that they could flag and put in their category, they do it. And the way the AI does it a lot of the time is like, they don't have the final like human aspect to it where it's like, okay, this isn't really that. This is just something that appears to be that, but it's not that. Cause I remember even Abba and Preach were talking about it. Abba had a video where he was talking about where his father died or whatever. And then that video got flagged for hate or something like that. But he was just talking about his father dying, right? So it's one of those where that video only got flagged. A human didn't go and actually flag it. That's not what I believe. I believe it was the AI. So they need to also regulate the AI because sometimes the AI is very aggressive in the content they start flagging. And I think that's where I believe there's kind of a problem because often that AI, they make a decision and that decision is what it is. And it's very hard to get an answer back from these platforms.